Hi, I'm John, founder of Essence, facilitator, musician, podcaster, and author of children's books. I guide people towards living their essence through one-on-one coaching journeys, group coaching programs, and many free offerings such as this podcast. If you want to go on a deep dive towards living your essence, I invite you to go to my website and book a free discovery call. And then we can explore many ways how you can live your unique essence. And now, let's jump straight into today's podcast episode.
Life has gotten more scary in some ways. It feels like the journey of authenticity, I guess, like that's something to speak to, especially when it comes to like embodying essence moving through one, right? There's this authentic expression that then comes forth, and sometimes that authentic expression is not what it disagrees with my self-image, or it disagrees with how I want to be perceived. And that's scary because then there's obviously this facing of rejection, or this facing of being misunderstood, or this having to face one's fears of being marginalized, or whatever they may be. I have all of those, I think. And so I find myself in a place of trembling. So often I'm having to be courageous to get over parts of myself that want safety and security.
Welcome to today's episode of Essence. In this episode, I have the great honor to have with me Sanya Manzoor. Sanya is an emotional poet who is in love with life. She's a coach, ritualist, ceremonialist, and community weaver. One of her greatest gifts is the gift of conversation, and she has also developed her own framework, MESH, which stands for mental, emotional, spiritual holism, which she applies when working with people who had spiritual emergencies. In this episode, we will be talking about a wide range of aspects of how we can live our essence. We cover topics such as what is essence, how essence and authenticity are correlated and connected. Sanya will be also talking about how prayer is supporting her in living her essence. And we'll be talking about the role of community. This episode is a really great episode, and I enjoyed the conversation so much. So thank you, Sanya, for being here, and welcome to this podcast.
Thank you, John. I'm super happy to be here. I'm also excited where this conversation is going to go.
This is always the beauty. We never know where it goes, and what I love to do is always just following the aliveness, because that's at least what supports me in connecting with my essence. And as always, I also asked Sanya, before we hit the record button, to go back in time to the last moment where she felt connected to her essence. And I haven't heard it yet. I'm really excited about it. Do you want to let us into this moment, Sanya?
Yes. So, when you invited me back in time, I found myself, and I questioned why it was this one that was arriving, because it's not the most joyful thing to share, but it is that I found myself on the floor, on a prayer mat on the floor. Days had passed where I could feel that there was something to feel, and there was something to feel, and there was something to feel, and I don't know, I wasn't able to feel it. But this morning that I found myself on this mat with my forehead on the floor, a phrase came into my awareness, and it was that everything is change. And it feels like I consistently don't accept that everything is change. And I found myself in a deeper acceptance, and what came with that was relief and grief and joy and ease. And I began to cry. And I didn't know why I was crying. There were some things that my mind grasped for, just to be like, what is this? Why? Why so much? Why does it feel like the dam of my tears have broken and an ocean is pouring out of me? Why? And the ideas didn't quite fit. It didn't make rational sense. And in that space of surrender, I recognized myself. I recognized a sense of homecoming in the open-hearted, tearful acceptance of change and of loss and of beauty and of love that all comes with this act of accepting what is as it is.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I feel deeply, deeply touched. And yeah, I have shivers listening to you. And what I appreciate so much about you as a being is that I feel so much depth being close to you, and depth in a way that feels easeful. And now I'm already connected to this depth just within these couple of sentences that you shared. And you mentioned this word prayer and prayer mat. And I wanted to ask you, what is prayer for you?
Prayer is something I forgot. I forgot it for so long. I ran from it for so long. Prayer for me, and this is personal for me, I feel like, is very much an act of surrender. When I find myself in prayer, I'm often asking for the arrogance in me that builds up every day to be broken down. In prayer, I find myself in this position of having my forehead on the ground because it feels like this is one of the only acts that I can somatically do that actually allows humility to enter my system. And in that space, I begin to ask for things and to exclaim things silently. But I am asking and I'm exclaiming, and the things that I find myself asking for is help. Help in surrendering better, more often help in remembering what feels true, help for remembering to be attuned to what feels alive. I ask for forgiveness for all the ways I forget and all the moments I distort myself and I distort myself often, I realized, and I find myself praying to become more available to what feels essential, to what feels truest, to what feels most alive, or just to life, just actually being more of widening my aperture for life to run through me rather than constricting it. And yeah, so prayer for me is this place that I find myself in, and more than anything, it serves as a way for me at the moment to break down my arrogance and surrender to life.
Wow, beautiful. And for me, like the next question that comes up out of curiosity is, what would you say? How does prayer support you in living your essence?
Great question. John, prayer supports me in so many ways. I didn't think that this conversation would down this path, but I'm so happy that it is, because it's actually a ritual act that I have really needed, and realized that in times of high stress, I was avoiding relaxing, I was avoiding surrendering, and I was going more into controlling behaviors. And there are experiences of incompetence and powerlessness and like overwhelm that I wasn't able to deal with well, and it all felt so personal. And so I found myself moving into consuming. I found myself feeling all of this discomfort, and then consuming like food, snacks, consuming content, consuming scrolling, consuming just addictive behaviors to soothe all of this overwhelm. And I found myself in a ritual not so long ago, and it was so clear that this consuming was a coping mechanism, and that life was saying, create. You're here to create. Let go of this consumptive soothing of your discomforts and pray. So I rebelled. The next day after this experience, I was like, no, and then I just consumed everything. Became a consumption black hole. And then the day after that, I gave it all up and was like, okay, I'm going to try this prayer thing with sincerity. I'm going to try it with sincerity, because I know the prayer act. I know what it should look like. I know probably the right words to say. But have I ever prayed with deep sincerity? And I didn't think that I had, apart from in times of deep despair. And I created a daily prayer practice for myself. And it supported me in, as I said earlier, like widening my aperture for life, to begin the day with my forehead on the floor and saying, I surrender to you, life. Please give me what there is for me to receive, and take from me what there is to be taken from me, what is not for me. And to live that, and to have this moment where I'm in communion with life, and I'm just there saying, give and take, make me an instrument, it's so humbling. So what it gives me is, a closeness to being able to live a surrendered life. And that allows me to have more intimacy with life as it is, because I am not trying to control it in the ways that I was before. And that I love.
Having more intimacy with life. What a beautiful sentence. There's definitely a big poet inside of you that I see and hear. And I find it so inspiring. And I can imagine that it's very inspiring for many other people also to hear what you're sharing, that the way how you live your life. I heard that you're aspiring towards always coming back to living in surrender and being open to receive what's there to receive, and that life can take from you what no longer serves or which never served you. And with this openness, I really feel that, I heard that you want to live in a way that life can create itself through you as an instrument. Mm-hmm. If you're enjoying this podcast, I invite you to click follow. Your single click can contribute to inspiring more and more people. I also invite you to go to my website and download my free 9 Ways to Live Your Essence guide. All the information you find in the description. So now let's continue with today's episode.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like we all are unique instruments. Some more flute like, some more guitar like, some more drum like. Unique, but every flute is different, every drum is different. And I have had this I was on a course this year for the second time, and it's called Coaching the Dream and Dreamer. And the dream that I was being coached on was I got to choose it, right? So and I was like, what dream do I want to be coached on? And the dream that felt the most true was like, I wish to just embody my authentic potential. Knowing that my authentic potential is different from yours or theirs or, a bird's or whatever. It's just going to look different when life expresses through me. I wish to know that. I wish to know myself as whatever that looks like, you know?
I love this attitude, and it deeply resonates with me. Like before this conversation started, you said, oh, we were talking a little bit about, okay, what could be interesting for today's conversation? And you began saying, yeah, let's explore what is essence? What is that
Mm-hmm.
actually? How do I know? And what is it not? And now, as we're talking about it a little bit, yeah, I resonate deeply with what you say. The way how I often describe it is that I believe that our essence is always there, and we can either connect with it or not. And then we have certain experiences in our life, conditioning, belief systems, stories, and so on and so forth that lead us to disconnect from it. And what I also believe is that the more we open up and let life express itself through us, the more easeful we can live and the more authenticity we'll have. And this, I'm not saying that it's going to be always super pleasant, as you share in the beginning also stated that this is it's not about always being on the happy, jolly side of life and more on how little resistance can I have to life flowing through me, and how can I direct my antenna to receive what life wants to create through me. And I find this such a beautiful way to live. Not easy in moments because there's so much conditioning that we need to get rid of, so much of what not is our essence, and so deeply fulfilling and gratifying. That's how I experience it. This, yes, it just feels like life has gotten 10 times more, not intense in a way and stressful, but colorful or deeper or richer. Yeah. How's it for you? Like since you've stepped on this path that you started describing with praying.
Life has gotten more scary in some ways. Um, it feels like the journey of authenticity, I guess, like that's something to speak to, especially when it comes to like embodying essence moving through one, right? There's this authentic expression that then comes forth. And sometimes that authentic expression is not what the it disagrees with my self-image, or it disagrees with how I want to be perceived. And that's scary because then there's obviously this facing of rejection, or this facing of being misunderstood, or this having to face one's fears of being marginalized, or whatever they may be. I have all of those, I think, and and so I find myself in a place of trembling. So often I'm having to be courageous to get over parts of myself that want safety and security, um, especially socially. Especially socially, I think that's probably my biggest hurdle is having these kinds of beliefs, right? These limitations on myself, fears of rejection, and so on. Um, and so it's scary. It's scary since praying that I can't. The message is a little clearer, or it becomes harder to go against oneself or myself. And yeah. So even when I send a text message, I'm like writing the text message, and then like I'm like, oh gosh, this is a pretty real message. I don't know. And then I hit send. I'm like, oh no. But then it like having to realign and like it's be like it's okay. You know, this is a practice. So life has become more scary, and it feels so much more adventurous. Yeah.
Yeah, I resonate 100% with that. Life has become so scary. Like these, and at the same time, it's like, how do you say that in English? Like eating from the apple of, not wisdom, but maybe it's just a German saying. I don't know. Like
What
once
is
you,
it in German?
um, vom Baum der Erkenntnis. Like if you have eaten
Mm-hmm.
from the tree of insight,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds so German. Well, probably it's German. Then you can't go back again. That's the
Yeah.
idea. It's like this, yeah, I've chosen to live this path and lead this life in such a way with the highest authenticity and integrity possible. That's this promise that I made to myself. And it's so scary because I need to say things that before, in order to protect my status, persona, the way I'm perceived, that I would have said nothing usually, or said something extremely nice to the other person just to not scare them away or to be judged. But yeah, now I'm also walking this path, and it's it's just very scary and adventurous. I would have never ever gotten to this place of right now having this conversation with you, with this podcast. Never, if I would have not chosen this path and just being out there and sharing with the world. Hey, I'm doing this now. I don't know if you will like it. I don't know if you will judge it. Probably the more people know about it, the more people will judge it as being too this, to that, too little, to I don't know. Um, but yeah, it's like being confronted. I feel very confronted with life and my inner truth.
I wonder if it's the same for you. And I totally resonate with this sense of feeling confronted with life, confronted in the ways that almost like if you choose this path, if you choose a path of authenticity, if you choose a path of like coming home to yourself, it correlates with a sense of liberation. For me, at least, like I feel like slowly as I make my little steps in this direction, more and more energy, more and more, there's more and more freedom available to me because I'm no longer constricted by that little piece of self-image I was trying to uphold, or that good girl that I was trying to be, or that like pleaser thing. I'm no longer a captive of my limitations. And so in that, or my beliefs, or my kind of like the little Sanya that needs all of these affirming, validating, soothing things. And I feel freer. I feel freer. And that freedom also feels risky. And in this choosing of the path, this authentic path, I feel like it's like an invitation to consistently be shown where I'm off.
Yeah.
Right? Like often uh, I will be in an experience and then I'll feel myself like go against myself, and it's so loud when it used to be subtle before. But now if I say something that I actually am not fully behind, afterwards I'm like, whoa. Whoa. Like I can't get away with that anymore to the extent that I totally could before. I lived my whole life getting away with it, you know? So
Yeah, like when I was listening to you right now, a very specific situation came to my mind that I had a
mhm,
couple of days ago. I was visiting my parents, and at the end of last year, 2024, a friend of mine had shared her morning routine with me
mhm,
because I said I want to feel like fitness in my body. I want to feel fitter in my body. I just want to feel better, stronger. And she said, well, what she does every morning is very simple. She just goes for a walk for half an hour with weights. She just walks around with weights. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this. So I was in this little, very Bavarian, very traditional village. and stepped out of the door with my two weights in my hand on the 1st of January, doing something new in this new year. I was walking around, and then there's only one crossroads in this little bit. I was standing there, and uh, like a guy, I think he came out of his house or something like that. So he saw me with these two weights, and he gave me a surprised look, like, whoa, weird guy with long hair, two weights in his hand on the 1st of January. And I noticed so strongly this impulse to hide these weights behind my back. And I felt this shame rising up so strongly. This, oh, I will be judged as the weird one. And it was so strong. And I was noticing it rising. And and then this thought popped up. This is so weird. Why would I feel so much shame just because I'm walking around with two weights in my hand? And when noticing it, then I made this decision. I felt confronted with my fear. And then I made this decision of, no, I want to care for myself. That's part of caring for my health. So I don't want to feel ashamed. This is my truth. I'm going to continue walking with my two weights and do my little workout and come back again. And I've been doing this practice every morning since the 1st of January. And every morning I meet someone else. And I still have this little shame impulse, but it's getting less and less. And this is for me so beautiful and such a beautiful metaphor, because it's not that after one experience it was completely gone. It's still there, but it's getting less and less and less. And I find it easier and easier and easier, basically, to live my authentic life with this very specific example. And it just came to my mind when you were sharing.
Do you think that the wounding that we receive in life somehow, like, I guess the question is more like, what do you think is the correlation between the wounding we receive in life and living our essence?
Ooh, the wounding we receive in life and our essence. Mm, that's a pretty deep question. I like that one. Hmm. Wow, it's like I'm just going through my mind the different woundings that I carry inside myself and try to ask myself how much that correlates with living my essence. I think one wounding that I carry inside of myself is this wounding of I'm not allowed to take up space. So I'm very good at providing space to others and listening, and that's why I'm coaching. Probably that's why I'm so good at that, because it's just the natural way to be, listening to others, holding space, asking questions. And then stepping out there and showing myself is one of the most scary things that I can imagine. Just like speaking about my truth is very scary. And I have this thought that by walking this path and living that, trying to live that day by day a little bit more, I can inspire others to do the same. And as it's been such a scary thing for me and so far from what I could imagine doing, I believe that creates a lot of authenticity and integrity, and is an invitation for others to do the same. So maybe that's one aspect how I see this wounding correlating to living my essence.
Yeah, totally. Like it feels like the wound of not taking up space is exactly the thing that you've got to move through in order to inspire others to live their essence. Because in some way, of course, there's this like kind of creating space for other people, but in order to create the space for other people, you've got to take up the space to create the space for other people. And you're here, and this is like a space that you provide, and then also a space that you occupy consistently, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is your space. And I also have had this question for myself around wounding, because so much of my returning to a more essential expression of myself And maybe we can go into like, what does that even mean? Um, so much wounding stands in my way. I feel like I meet myself at like a threshold, and the gatekeeper of that threshold is me having to move beyond a wound. There are some parts where it's like very easy. Oh, I can become more playful, and that's fine, and and I move more into playfulness. But then when it comes to like public speaking, there's I'm afraid of being humiliated. I'm afraid of being my words being twisted. I'm afraid of being misunderstood. I'm afraid of not being seen for who I act like, who I believe myself to actually be. I'm afraid of being cancelled, and so like, and all of that, I can feel how, for example, my journey with the Church of Interbeing, or just being a host in the Church of Interbeing, so hosting community ritual, where you have a lot of people coming and you don't know who they are, and some of them you do know, and some of them don't know you, and weird dynamics, beautiful dynamics, but very challenging to then slowly build up the capacity to stand there and facilitate a space and take up space in this context whilst having all of these fears. And I remember my first time expanding into this part of my essence, where I was about to begin hosting a community space. And I was sitting at the front, and everybody was looking at me. Not everybody, some people had their eyes closed, but it felt like everybody was looking at me. And I had this microphone in my hand, just about to welcome everybody, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I was so scared, and it felt like I was just about to die. It felt like a death. Me sitting there, microphone in hand, just having to like push the button up to turn it on to say something into the space. I was on the threshold of a death and rebirth, or a death and birth into something. And I remember that this sensation and this fear and this, oh gosh. And the room was so quiet. And the moment I said something, I died. And then I had to keep showing up and keep going through these little deaths, as you said, like slowly, slowly, as you shared with the weights, for example, that it gets less and less each time. This hiding, or this whatever it may be, being captive to the mechanisms that create a social acceptability of whatever we might be believing is more socially delicious. And I have a lot of these threshold guardians, where it's like, meet your wounds now. You're here, and it's like, okay, you want to up level into more of your into creating space more in your body for essence to move through you, then you can't get through it without facing your wounding. I can't.
Yeah, when you were sharing, I was literally holding my breath, like, did you say something in the end or not? What happened? And it's like this, I really feel this also, this fear of I'm gonna die. It really feels like that, right? If I'm gonna do this, this is gonna be the worst thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
And sometime I also would love to talk to you also in this episode about like the Church of Interbeing and everything, about that, because people might not know it, and it's amazing. And what I'm often asking myself when it comes to this fear of letting parts of us die, or these guardians go, sometimes I find myself thinking, well, these wounds and these fears are probably the best guides, because when moving through that, at the other side, there's so much beauty. And if I would not have moved through my fears, and I have many more as well, then I would not be doing what I'm doing right now. So on one side, I think, it's so clear, right? If you just follow your fear, and then you will come out if you move through it with courage. and other times I think, well, if you always follow your fear, that also can't be healthy. So it's like this distinguishing discernment of what am I able to meet in this moment, knowing that our system always has a certain capacity. And I believe that when we're just ripe to pop, something is about to pop, then life brings us something that we can meet and hopefully move through it with courage and tiny baby steps. And I don't know how that is for you, this trying to, do you discern at all, being like, okay, I'm just going to follow that fear and this fear, and here's another one, and that seems crazy, so I'm just going to go over there. How's that for you?
Oh, John, I'm pretty rogue. I'm pretty rogue with this. Like I'm like my own yes man, and sometimes it's not the best discernment, but I bounce back really easily and quick from things. So I feel lucky that I can say yes to stuff that is so outside of my comfort zone quite often. And I think that, it brought up this question that I wanted to bring to you, or like put in the space that actually has to do with a higher power, and like, because sometimes I don't know how to have all the conversations without bringing in the dimension of there being a higher power. And that can be like life and the intelligence of life, or whatever people will say. But I do use the word God myself, and so speaking from a personal place, I what helps me is feeling that, or what doesn't help me first. What doesn't help me in moving towards fears is like believing that I'm alone, or that there's nothing guiding me, or that there isn't something moving through me, and I feel so supported and so helped in taking risks and doing things that are these deathly things, metaphorically speaking and egoically speaking, um, because I subscribe to a belief in a higher power, and that I therefore don't feel like I'm having to move through life without guidance, without support, without meaning, or without a heldness, without being surrendered to something greater than me, that a current that can also carry me through the thing that is asking me to die and meet the guardian and get over it, and in the most compassionate way possible. But sometimes not, but yeah. So I wonder if there's how would you bring in that into the conversation, like a higher power?
I definitely also believe that something is guiding us and me.
Mm-hmm.
And how I like to describe it is that, and I like the word how you said that you subscribe to this
Mm-hmm.
belief system.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I believe that we can choose to a certain degree, and I think it's quite a large degree, what we want to believe in, and that this can really support us.
Mm.
And what I choose to believe, what really supports me, is that there is one consciousness which expresses itself in many, many different forms and shapes. And these forms and shapes can be humans, animals, trees, everything. And also within us humans, that this consciousness expresses itself in various forms and shapes. And this consciousness, I also like to link it to essence, that there's this one bigger essence. And each of us have their own unique flavor and expression. And I believe in that because it supports me in trusting that this expression of consciousness or essence is meant to be and has such a high intelligence. If I look into nature, there's nothing that I could create. If I look around, this is this massive intelligence. So I believe that this intelligence is way higher than my intelligence. And if I can tune into that other intelligence, this consciousness, then I can be part of this larger movement, of this larger expression. And that comes also to what you were mentioning, to surrendering in to what wants to happen, and to cultivating the skill of really deeply listening of what is it that wants to express itself through me, or what is it that wants to be created through me. And I ask myself this question very often, actually on a regular basis. Why is this happening now? What is my part in this play? And yeah, what wants to be, yeah, said through me or asked through me? And that also, in giving me this sensation of trust, gives me more ease in my life, because I know that I don't need to think about everything and have solutions for everything. It puts me more into this position of just listening and knowing that there are already some signals coming my way, and I just need to tune into with my little radio system to be able to hear them. That's what I believe in, and it definitely supports me in moving forward. Yeah.
And then, so this you shared about there being this like one greater intelligence or essence, and it brought up this question for me, like an inquiry around, does this one greater essence, so is essence all the same? Like, is essence itself, like the quality of essence, does that ever change flavor, and that the expression of essence is the changing of the flavor? And I'm providing a framework, I'm trying to work with
I
a
love
framework.
it.
So
Yes.
could it all just be essence, and then the expression of the essence through a blueprint is like authenticity? So
Yeah,
is it that essence expressed in its truth is authenticity? But is essence different? Or can essence ever be different?
I love this inquiry. It's so beautiful. Yeah, I'm asking myself all this time these questions, and every day I have
Mm-hmm.
different answers or ways of seeing it. Right now, when you asked the question, I was drinking from my glass of water, and this
Mm-hmm.
analogy popped up. So, if essence is the combination of molecules in water, then this can have the expression of water or ice or clouds. So, and this is the first time that I think about it in this way, so it's beautiful that you bring that up. I do believe that there's this one core essence, and all these different expressions are, on one side, kind of what is asked for, what is wanted to be seen or created, and on the other side, also just pure beauty. If I look around in nature, sometimes I ask myself, what is that for? And it's just beautiful. I also believe that life creates itself because of beauty, just to celebrate life and itself. And there's a lot of intelligence and function in it. And I also think that it's about this authentic expression of beauty, not diminishing its beauty. Like also trees in autumn also don't decide after day two, well, it's actually a little bit too colorful. Let me turn it to gray tomorrow. It's just like they dare to express themselves authentically in all their beauty. And that's what I love about it. And I also like the way how you asked or connected is the expression of essence, authenticity. I like that. What else is going on in your mind right now? I see that there is something bubbling.
It has to now I'm kind of like on your beauty train, and I have this
The
question
beauty
around
train. I love it.
what about things that we are conditioned not to find beautiful? So how do we know how what 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 is beauty? And are we conditioned? Do we even have the capacity, considering how we are conditioned in this kind of modern world, to perceive beauty as it is? Can we do that? Because I had a beautiful discussion at yesterday, on Sunday. So yesterday, and one woman was sharing that she did not want to take her shoes off to put her feet on the ground, because the leaves were all dissolving and it was wet and it was gross. And she found herself experiencing disgust. And it brought up this question around, is that a conditioning? to not be able to perceive the beauty of the dissolving and dissolution of matter to become fertile ground to be recomposted? Or is that actually a very beautiful thing, an essential thing?
I believe that a lot of that is conditioning. I've been developing this framework also with this question of how can we live our essence, basically, because I'm asking myself this question all the time. And I see that there are two main components and ingredients, and one of them is awareness. The first one of being like, oh, something's coming up for me, like with these weights and my shame, for example, having this awareness, oh, okay, there's shame coming up. Why that? Interesting. And then the second one is for me reconnecting, and that's first starts with releasing, letting go of conditioning or beliefs, because I believe that most of them are filters through which we see the world in a distorted way. If we see a child on a playground playing with sand and throwing it around, we could either say, oh, such an unbehaved child. Her parents should take better care of her, or whatever. Or we see, wow, this is someone expressing themselves freely and authentically with a lot of aliveness. And then we lose the beauty for it because we have like this filter. So I believe that there's a lot of things that we can let go of in order to then reconnect with our essence and then follow this authentic self-expression, which is super challenging. For me, it's very challenging every now and then when I'm confronted with, I want to be seen as this kind of person. Oh, my identity is this and that. And then if I don't get the confirmation from my immediate environment that, yes, you are this kind of person that you believe that you are, this creates fear and also shame and disbelief and a lack of orientation. And then I have this kind of spiritual practice telling myself every time, all right, this is just another thing that you can see, let go, and then reconnect with your deeper truth. And I'm not saying that it works all the time. It's just like for me, I'm trying really hard to practice this. Not hard, but constantly. Constantly. I think it's a better word. Yeah. Reminding myself.
Great. Great. Yeah. I have uh it, the thought appeared of like, is it so within like this, within the spiritual scene and things like that, right? There's also like a certain persona that can be built in order to fit in and live in community within a spiritual sphere. And it's like, what about, is it ever essential? Is it ever true? Is it ever what wants to happen that ferocity comes through, or being a total asshole in a moment happens, or being a bitch all of a sudden is the thing, you know? And yeah, like there's a wanting in me to be like, ah, and then there are these parts of us, you know, these parts that are harder to find a place in, especially if you're living in a context like that I'm living in, which is more kind of like the spiritual scene and things like that. To notice within myself, like, yeah, there are certain traits that actually feel quite true that within that sphere are judged as ugly or not beautiful, but are essential and do have actually a function in moments, but then are also suppressed. And then what does that suppression of this like kind of authentic expression movement create within the ego of a community or a culture or a country? Or yeah.
Yeah, I see the same pattern happening very often in spiritual contexts and communities. This spiritual bypassing, if you want to call it that way, of just being on the light side and suppressing the dark, and being always in a very flowy state, but not really living like this clear masculine penetrative energy. And I, for myself, also have like this constant quest of, okay, I'm definitely more of experience myself more often on the lighter, open, and flowy side of life, and I also have this own quest of when is actually another energy that wants to come through, which I'm either not even noticing or suppressing actively or subconsciously. When does that want to come through? And what I also believe in is that if we, as either communities or societies and countries, suppress this darker energy or suppress this raw energy, can be wild, raw, dark, just like a volcano energy. If we suppress that, it will come out sideways.
Mm-hmm.
And that will come out in an unexpected way where something happens and we're like, oh, wow, we didn't see that coming. So I can imagine that there's something in these communities that might support communities if there would be a ritual around sacred and raw or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And just like, let's celebrate this. And I can actually imagine that this either has already happened at the Church of Interbeing or will happen soon. And I would actually love to make this transition of maybe that already happened, maybe it will happen. And how can community support us in living our essence? So maybe you want to share a little bit about Church of Interbeing, because I love this project so much. I've been there so often, and I want everyone else to know about it as well. And what is your
Yeah.
role in it? So many questions. Sorry, it's overwhelming.
Great segue into that.
Yeah.
For me, the Church of Interbeing, it is essentially it's a community. And what brings this community together is this shared kind of intention around meeting in ritual to explore together the different ways that we can connect to ourselves, to each other, and to life. And at the Church of Interbeing, through attunement to the community, different themes kind of emerge around or within a group of people that have taken the responsibility to really hold the spaces and facilitate the space. And the space would be a 2-hour gathering on a Sunday at 1, where everyone is invited, anyone is invited. And the intention is to remain non-dogmatic in the space, is to remain pretty inquiry based within the space, so nothing is being preached or nothing really is being taught, but things are being explored and people are coming together around a question or an idea to work with it, to commune with it, and then to commune with each other and themselves and life. And it's a project that is a very grassroots one. It's just here in Berlin, little community in a sweet, very kind of progressive church space, and it's grown so slowly and organically and sweetly. It's a beautiful project founded by a man called Adam McKenty, and my role in this project is, at the moment, it's a role that's called project lead, but it's probably going to be reconfigured to be a coordination role that will be shared by 3 people. And this role is really in service to the team and coordinating the team that allow for all the different organs of the Church of Interbeing to thrive. And being attuned to the community. So that's my role, and that's the project. But then how does the project serve essence? And the other question you had was about, has the rawness come in?
Yes, and another one, just because I was thinking maybe someone is listening right now and has heard the word church very often, and maybe there's some assumptions of what that looks like associated to all the other churches that we have seen. Maybe you want to remove some of the assumptions that might be out there. It's not everyone sitting in a row And you said no one preaching there and
Oh no,
no Jesus
exactly.
and
No, no. It's not a denomination of the Christian church. It is a reclamation of the word church as a space where we can commune to touch the sacred together, gathering on a Sunday in the name of exploration of both our humanness and that which whatever we all as individuals deem to be sacred. But there is no doctrine and there is no particular identifiable, really thick philosophy that we swim in or that we endorse. That's not to say that this space is unwelcoming to religion or to faith or faiths or to various spiritual practices and so on. It is welcoming. So there may be a story or a myth brought in from Hinduism. There may be a story brought in from Christianity. There may be a story brought in from Sufism. There may be a story brought in from the work that reconnects, or from a philosopher, or from a community member. And so there's a lot of space for that without it meaning that this is the thing that we now believe. So does that answer the question?
beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much. And I really love this project, and I can recommend to anyone, just go there, experience it once, and then after that you can make your own opinion. And I just really, really enjoy it. And yeah, this other question was, how can community, as it's also a community project, support all of us, individuals, in living our essence?
That's not an easy one, because community is a social space. Community is a place also where a lot of our strategies to avoid our essence can come out. So it's tricky. It's tricky to create that within community. Aside from having certain values and principles kind of be established within the community space. And for one, what's unusual about this space is that the primary meeting point is around ritual and is around connecting, is around connection to oneself and then to each other and to life. But really, really exploring how it is that we are the subject through which everything is related to. And through exploring the subject, you can find your own beliefs, limitations, distortions, the things that you're really invested in, the strategies, the mechanisms. If that space is slow enough and feels held enough, and if the participant feels courageous enough. So I think that this particular space supports it by being such a space, by being that slow space. And a space that can feel uncomfortably slow sometimes, where you do meet yourself in this slowness where you can know things more intimately, where it's not so easy to brush past an experience, but an experience in its slowness and in the quietness becomes loud. And the facilitation has also got to represent either that depth or that connectedness or intimacy or that vulnerability as a permission or as an invitation. And so it then kind of almost becomes magnetic to people that resonate with that feel aligned with this kind of space and what is being put into it, and therefore what is also being generated within it. And this space creates the opportunity to dialogue with each other, having kind of more controlled dialogues where there's a question put in, there's a time frame for that question, which has been led up to with a meditation and an embodied practice to explore whatever's going to be explored in that question. And so this kind of honesty is promoted through the ritual arc of this kind of collectively held communal experience. And so there is always the intention there to create that depth of being able to meet oneself and to meet the other from a really, really true place. And we're all people and we're all humans, and it can't do the job fully because people do want to belong in communities. People do want to be accepted and so on. And so this community can simply do its best to allow the foundation to be connecting on an authentic level. But whether or not that happens all the time or can happen all the time is uncontrollable.
Yeah, I've been so often in that space, and I really appreciated the facilitation with such diligence and slowness and care. And I've been experiencing that really allowed first everyone to connect with themselves and then with one another if they choose to. So I truly believe that community can serve all of us in connecting with our essence. For one reason, because we will meet our triggers and projections and all the stuff that we throw out there in the world. If we have people around us, we will see what we attack in the outside. And that will always lead us towards a question like, okay, what is it inside of me? What am I judging? What is my story? What did I put in the shadow? And so on and so forth. So I think that's one important aspect. And if that is held in a way where consciousness is present, that it can be seen, observed, and just like, oh, now this is playing out. Interesting. I'm running this story, and my impulse is actually to do this right now. This is so interesting. Then this can become a path towards what I also shared before, reconnecting with the deeper level inside of us. So like bringing this stuff up, which it comes naturally when being with other people, having the consciousness and awareness that it's happening, and then being able to let go of some older story and reconnect with like our deeper truth, I think is such a beautiful power of community if we come together in an intentional way and not avoid or consume our way out of the feeling of the uncomfortable, but actually bringing awareness and then meeting it with love, with openness, with kindness, with slowness.
Love that, John. Beautifully articulated.
Mm.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoy this so much in sharing that experience also with other people. And what I love to do is invite other people and connect with themselves. And yeah, so I recommend everyone, please go to the Church of Interbeing.
Yeah.
Well,
please come. Please join us. It's in Berlin. And perhaps you could link it below, John.
Definitely, I will. Yeah.
Amazing. That would be fantastic.
So I feel that our conversation is naturally right now coming towards a close, and I have two more questions for you. Ooh. One is the unanswered question: is the rawness? Has there been a format for raw, sacred, and raw at the Church of Interbeing, or not? Will that still come? So this is one open question. The other one I ask afterwards.
In bits and pieces. It has definitely been identified that actually it's a kind of something we didn't know how to facilitate that well. It was so much easier to stay in the light stuff, and it's so much, and then having these moments of creating spaces for grief or creating spaces for regret. But then there are the things that are more challenging to hold. And so we've created services on like rewilding, for example. We've had a primal play service, which is different from the school of primal play, but it's more about being able to experience yourself animalistically and then just kind of play as animals together. And so little pockets of that kind of space, but there is actually a lot of space to grow more into that and serve that part of humanity, or the community, from a more honorable place, a more kind of like acknowledging that aspect of humanness that does unlock parts of our essence that we often would probably avoid, not have space for. You know, there's another event that happens sometimes in Berlin, and it's like a type of ecstatic dance, but before that they do the haka, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I there's something so beautiful about the kind of energy and the embodiment practice that is, that some other spaces don't yet know how to integrate. And so, yeah, more of that.
Okay, amazing. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, now my final question for this episode. If there's anything else that you would like to share, where you have the feeling that, oh, I would love everyone to know this and that, or I just want to say this to the people listening, or yeah, whatever it is, now is the time. Just if there's still anything that you would like to share, space is yours.
Dear people, I encourage you at least one time a day to put your forehead on the ground. And with your forehead on the ground, just wait until you feel this sense of reverence, a sincere reverence for life, and see what happens.
Thank you so much, Sanya, for being here. I feel so, so deeply inspired. You as a prayer, being here as a guest, sharing your essence, your authenticity, your aliveness. I'm so grateful that, yeah, we had this conversation. I had no idea where this would be going. And I'm so grateful that we went where we went. And I wish everyone else, yeah, that you can take some inspiration from this conversation. And definitely check out Church of Interbeing and everything else that Sanya is doing. So thank you so much, Sanya.
Pleasure, John. Thank you. Until next time.
Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.